So good morning and welcome. My name is Cassandra Washburn and I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Aviation Historical Society and Museum, clear down in Cottage Grove, Oregon. We're at the west end of 61S to Cottage Grove State Airport. The museum's been around, the building's been around since about 1998, and the directors there have been collecting history since who knows when. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the Beaverton Outlaws and the fact that come on in, sit down, there's chairs.
Sorry.
That's all right. So today's presentation is going to include about 4 different videos that we keep in our archives. These videos include first-hand interviews and accounts from the outlaws themselves, these guys who flew in Oregon throughout the 1920s, 30s, and beyond. The first video we're going to watch talks about how it was actually illegal in the U.S. to build and fly your own aircraft clear up until 1952. That's an important fact because Oregon actually established a state board of aeronautics clear back in 1921. So in 1926, when the Bureau of Air Commerce came in and established regulations, Danny Greco will talk about it, but they left out home builds. They didn't say that you could, they didn't say that you couldn't, they just kind of didn't want you to. So Oregon started issuing pilot's licenses, aircraft registrations, aircraft airworthiness certificates, and most of all, aircraft license plates. We were the only state in the Union to ever issue them. They were issued through 1926 through 1941 with the start of World War II. So in these videos, I want you to keep a lookout under the cockpit on the cowlings. You'll see these license plates with the different years. They were issued every year, and it just kind of depended on when you registered your aircraft, what license plate you got that year. We do have one of the largest collections, not that there's many, of the license plates at the museum, which belongs to Myron Buswell. Excuse me. Also in the videos, I want you to take note, those of you especially who are pilots, there'll be identification numbers on the aircraft. There's typically no N number, no X, no C. Because in that time period, they had to be federally identified, but they couldn't be federally registered, especially if they were home builds, until after the war. In this first video, we'll also learn about George Bogardus, who after World War II, the CAA then kind of cracked down and said, no more home builds, period, end of story. So George Bogardus took what's now called the little GB and flew cross-country twice in 47 and 51. And in 1952, the CAA finally conceded and established the amateur and experimental class of aviation, which is what we fly and build under today. So without Oregon and the Oregon aviators that you'll meet today, we wouldn't have the capabilities that we do. So without further ado, the Beaverton Outlaws. This is as loud as we got, so. Oh! No! There's always something, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the way computers are designed.
Right after the First World War in 1920 was when the State Board of Aeronautics established state laws way ahead of the federal government. We didn't even know if the federal government was going to take over control of airspace.
The Oregon Board of Aeronautics, which is one of the oldest boards in the country, they had a licensing provision which included an aluminum license plate. We had licenses, I even had an Oregon State food permit. And then later on, I got an Oregon State private license.
In 1926, the Department of Commerce, Bureau of Air Commerce came into being. There were the complete standards for the certification of aircraft, pilot training, and set up the various types of licenses, and then all the rules and regulations for the transport industry and maintenance flight.
June of 1926 is when the government took over the regulations. And that was before the FAA and before the CAA. It come under the Department of Commerce Aeronautics branch. The state of Oregon was the outlaw state of the whole United States. Connecticut and Oregon were the two outlaw states. It didn't care what the federal regulations said or what they wanted us to do. We kept on flying.
1938, it came from the Bureau of Air Commerce to the Civil Aeronautics Administration. More extensive documentation, more regulations, more inspections for repairs. They had a lot more people came into being.
The boys at the airplanes you heard were not licensed by the federal, they were on licensed plates. And this was quite a battle. Many letters, many hours of meeting with people trying to keep the state license. In fact, one time, Fred had a plane that was stolen. Went out to fly and the plane wasn't there. Someone picked it up and took it back into the hills. And to get the state people to help you was fine, but the feds, because we were not federally licensed, didn't want to try it. We did get the plane back, we found out where it went, so why the fellow took it, we never knew, just a large.
They were more or less always harassing us and trying to cause us trouble. And they wanted to inspect the airplanes, and they wanted to do this and they wanted to do that. They knew we had the state rights, but they didn't want to respect them. And so consequently, they say, well, hey, every time you take off, it's going to be we'll find something, I don't know, $1,000 or something. And they had a fantastic figure all rolled up, and they said that you're going to, every time you land and every time you take off, and I told them, well, I said, you get your book because you're going to fill it up. We're going to just keep on flying. They were writing all our names down, and they were going to push you there, I guess, or something, and so they wouldn't get hand off for them because the state was still back on us. And any time that we seemed to want to go to an air meet, they seemed to always be poking around, wanting to cause trouble and harassment. And just like one of them came up to the hangar one day and he wanted to look at my airplane. But it happened to be a little bit muddy out there by the hangar. He said, go get me a board and lay down so I wouldn't have to walk in this mud. And I first told him what I had in mind, and then too. I didn't put in federal stuff either. But I wasn't about to lay my coat down next door or running for that guy.
Yeah, 39 and 40. And that's when Charlie Walker was really hassling people through any means that he could, like he attempted to stop that type of flying that was out there, but there wasn't really much we could do either.
A couple of fly-ins down to Springfield, Oregon. Charlie Walker was down there and said, you guys fly up the airway about sight you and find you. In fact, I think he got physically abused because of that too. I think there was some real good fist fight.
The guys that get a gang together and they go down to the beach for a weekend. I've washed a lot of sand out of some of those old biplanes. You know, they camp out on the beach for a weekend and really have a roaring party. Or if they wanted to liven things up, they go up the coast, up to Longview, and have a big blast there. Well, Longview is Washington, which put the feds on their back. You know, the feds would start coming around, and they start looking. And I remember well an incident involving a flight under a bridge up near Longview. And there was a lift involved. And the bridge keeper was mad as hell, but he couldn't identify the aircraft for sure. But anyway, the feds hunted Beaverton for a week, trying to figure out which biplane it was. You didn't know any flying, Mr. Boy. I fly every day. Why? Just nose around, they finally gave up, you know.
The CAA started to foster a program of requiring federal licenses on airplanes, and this went against the grain of the guys who were at Beaverton, and in fact, kind of generated the atmosphere of an outlaw group because of it. It started probably 1939, 1940, and even in 41, right up to the war. I was flying on the Sunday of Pearl Harbor, and I remember landing and coming in, and someone said that they had bombed Pearl Harbor. So, and I didn't fly anymore that day, and the reason I recall this is because the following week, all airplanes within 100 miles of the coast were grounded. George that challenged the federal government to arrest it for flying an illegal and criminal aircraft. He was the first man to bring about the new flying rules by the federal government to permit us once again to design and build our own airplanes. If it hadn't been for George Bogart, the present home-builder movement would never have been at all possible. It was because of his foresight, and because of his grit, and his determination, and his nerve, that we do have the present laws that permit our aviation.
He took off and he headed east. And he made a personal appearance from Kansas, and petitioned Congress to have a ban on home building in the East. He presented his aircraft as proof that this was possible for a man of average means and average intelligence to put together a sound, safe aircraft that was capable of long-distance flight and a safe flight. He demonstrated the aircraft, he took Congress to see it, and he won the battle. After he got done with Congress, he continued east. He flew the GB around the Statue of Liberty and then turned her home.
And now we can build experimental aircraft. So a couple notes. When Bogart has passed away, his estate was actually donated to EAA Chapter 105, which is up out of Twin Oaks. Excuse me. And Van Brunson actually had the little GB rebuilt, and it's currently in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. So as much as we would love to have that aircraft, we're glad that it is where it is. The next video that we're going to watch is about Charlie Bernard. So those of you who do know of Bernard's Field out in Beaverton. So there was lots of little pockets all around Oregon in the 1920s and 30s. Klamath Falls had flyers, Sutherland had flyers in a new airport in Medford, John Day had Ted Barber in the Model T engine, and in the Portland area. But Bernard's Field was kind of this perfect storm of Les Long and George Yates and Charlie Bernard and Myron Buswell and all of these people who were designers and builders and just had a passion for aviation, where they all came together. So Bernard's Field is the largest congregation in that golden age of aviation in Oregon, so that's why we know them as the Beaverton Outlaws. They were also most of the guys that got sued in the lawsuits prior to the war with the student prince and building the bridge and all that good stuff. So the next video we're going to watch is all about Charlie Bernard, where he got his inspiration and why he built the field. And these videos are actually all thanks to a retired United Airlines pilot by the name of John Patton, who in '78 met one of these guys and said, this has to be recorded. And so he went around Oregon and interviewed all of these guys, and we have over 100 hours of interview tapes. We're currently working with a documentary director to hopefully get this into an actual 2-hour special to tell this story.
Memory and description. This is the name of it.
I walked from here to Portland to see the aircraft take off at Multnomah Hotel. I think that was in 1912. I was always interested in the aircraft. I wanted to be around them. I wanted to play with them. Oh, when I was going to high school, this piece of ground was always in my mind. It belonged to a Lincoln. And I got it and developed it because I was brush in the year. The more I lectured the aircraft, thought about it, the more I thought there was a possibility of developing something. And in my mind, I was developing the runway from where we walk the road till I'm down to the creek. I could be about 4,000 feet. We first started here with gliders. Most of them had a wind of about 35 to 40 feet off of the wind plane. And there was just a little crater under the wing where the pilot sat.
Yeah, I went out and made arrangements with Charlie Bernard to fly off his hayfield out of Beaverton, Oregon. It was in the late 20s that we went out there. Charlie had just done his hay. All he used the steel for in those days was for hay and agricultural purposes.
We first started here with gliders. We would take the automobile and daddy them. And then finally, down in the wintertime, during the lake, and then I would shot in the satellite. I took my satellite and put some shot cord onto the horn, and I would get them up that way. But most of them were satisfied just to get in the air. They fly 100 feet, that's fine. If they fly 1,000 feet, that's still better. I went out and looked at some of these fields out of Vancouver, where these amateurs were trying to fly in Rose City, and the Rose City racetrack, they were trying to fly there, and we didn't get any cooperation. So one of the Yates was building an aircraft in Beaverton, and I really talked with him, and he now looked at he thought it'd be ideal. So I developed, put one hand, made a runway here, and before that aircraft was completed in the hangar down here, I started 4 or 5 more hangars. They were all for homemade aircraft, boys' own design. And this first aircraft was finished. It flew very well. The next one flew, and then the other amateurs started to meet him. I just sit down and build it. And within a year, I had about 8, 10 hangars, and they were all homemade built aircraft.
Charlie was a gentleman, and he became a champion of the flying community and fostered it. And I never heard him ever say anything bad about anybody. He didn't fly himself, but he just became a champion for the fellows to have their airplanes. They couldn't be over in Swan Island with them licensed aircraft, and he established the field, and he was their champion. You know, all the hangars were built out of used lumber and pole construction. They were pretty crude, but they served their purpose. You know, there was a lot of them out there.
I'll tell you, I built the first hangar. Took 2 or 3 weeks to put the first one up. And before I got the first hangar up, I had an order for the next hangar. I had moved the fuel out a little bit. And I had an order for the next one. Before I got this one started, I had an order for this one. I was building good hangars because the people I built for could afford to pay for them. And all the rest of them I
Well, I bought a lot of what the Kaiser signs, the 4x8 signs they use, and I built the hangers, the side of the hanger, out of those signs. Of course, I put a metal roof on them, and that's why I was charging these stores up here, these three along here, $15 a month hanger rent. And the kids there had a hard time getting going, why they'd help me build a hanger and so forth. I charged them $5 a month.
I apparently just drove over to see what was going on. And I saw all these airplanes and all the guys around and all the spectators, you know, on a Sunday. That was a regular, like, you might say, a tourist attraction. It really was something. There'd be cars lined up there, people just come out to the airport to watch the fellas fly.
The fields in the rougher parts of the year, the rainy season and stuff, usually got down to where you had maybe 700 foot of runway at the best, with some walloping good mud holes that you learn how to skim through. And it usually led to some pretty treacherous takeoffs. We didn't usually run true to the runway a lot of times, we angled. And this, coupled with the crosswind, produced some interesting takeoffs at times. A statement that often was heard around the Northwest: if you were a Beaverton pilot, or you could fly and land in and out of Beaverton, you could go anywhere, no difficulty.
The next one is about George Yates himself. So he built that Stiper, that white aircraft, tandem open cockpit, high wing. George Yates was actually a mechanic, and he raced flat track motorcycles and wooden boats on the Columbia, and he worked for a guy named Elmer Stipe, who owned the Chevrolet dealership. So Elmer Stipe said, hey, build boats, build me an airplane. And so George built his first aircraft. Les Long actually built the wing for it, and it had a 4-cylinder Martin, 120, 125 horsepower. That aircraft flew over 4,000 hours by the time it was destroyed behind the hangar after the war. It taught Swede Ralston, Myron Buswell, George Yates taught a lot of those guys to fly. Eugene Pulsifer, who had a steerman in the Lincoln Page. So that aircraft taught a lot of the Outlaws how to fly, and they soloed in it. George then went on to design the Geodetics, which is kind of that weird aircraft that was sitting out front of his hangar. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. He typically used fir, not spruce. His ultimate goal was to get a military contract for trainers. And as he'll talk about, he truly believed in the safety of the aircraft, that you could crack it up without killing yourself. He had a hangar fire in 1938, and in our archives, Myron Buswell, thank goodness, was one of those who wrote paragraphs on the back of photographs. And so we have pictures of George Yates' burnt hangar, and Myron writes stories about running upstairs and throwing M50s out the Monasco engines out the window to save the engines. You'll also see a photograph of a bimotor. I believe it's one of the first in the video. It's 2 M50 Monasco engines that George Yates used. He much preferred the Monascos to Continentals. Back in the day. Just one of those things. I think that's about it for that one. And then keep a lookout for the Wimpy. That's one of the aircraft that we still have in our restoration shop. And then the Rupert Special, I believe, is this one as well. So, lots of information.
The geodetic design was absolutely new. As far as I know, George Yates was the first ever to utilize geodetic. And he did some of the most beautiful work ever done. And in those days, geodetic produced the lightest weight structural entity that had ever been built at that time. In other words, it had the lowest weight for the greatest strength value ever produced by anyone, anywhere. Now, this was all done without engineers. The ships were, they behaved beautifully. They had no bad flight characteristics that I know of at all. In fact, when it's all around the airplane, I think that Yates' geodesic airplane was years and years ahead of itself. And the Skyper, by the way, is the airplane that Dick Yates built, a Martin 4-cylinder, 120 horsepower engine, and this is the thing we used to teach several of us to fly. And in fact, there were three people involved in the training program that I was involved in at the time I worked with him. There was Gilbert, Buzzwell, and Pulper. We all learned to fly that same spring, and they used to have quite a contest. And Yates made it possible. The interesting thing about it is, one day I asked Mr. Yates, just a year or two ago, I talked to George for old time's sake, and we were talking about the licenses and things, and I said, well, one thing about it, you never had a license in your life, I guess. And he said, that isn't true. He went and got a packet out of his keepsakes, and he says, look at this, and he had a license signed by Orville Wright. And he signed as a member of the Federal Aeronautics International.
The Skyper is dead to school all the time. It did have a metal prop, which was really nice to have. Most propellers were wooden. And it also had 4 exhaust stacks. It was an inverted Martin engine on a 4-cylinder. The 4 exhaust stacks pointed straight down. When that thing would fly over, it really did blow it. And it was a loud airplane, very loud. Without looking, you always knew when it was in the air.
I remember the event of the day was usually George Yates getting the decipher when it became dusk and flying over the field, coming on down, side flip, bounce the tail on the ground a couple times, and take off again. One Sunday he came over to me and I had said, I hope George never asked me to fly. I know he's a good pilot, but I would be a little nervous. So sure enough, here came George one Sunday evening, threw me the helmet, said, come on, Mark, we're going flying. When we got up, he said, it's all yours. And of course, I'd never flown. I guess I did a pretty good job, because we're still here. But he did come down, he did side flip, and on up, which was really a thrill.
Did you fly with George Yates again?
Yes, yes.
We had a lot of fun here. I don't know of anything that's any more fun. Everything's geodetic now, as far as I'm concerned. Geodetic gives you what you need right now. And we didn't have any failures in it. I don't say you can't crank it up, but you can crank it up without getting killed instantly. Because it bounces. And this airport got quite famous, just from mouth to mouth. And they began to bring in their old planes in because we could revamp it and make better things out of it. We were maybe work on it and fix it up. I think everybody connected with this little field, that they all think that there's something should still be done about it. Otherwise, it'll just disappear in the past.
He's taken feet off of the wings and put a 9-cylinder something. Just a beautiful sounding engine, you know, with the power and the sound of that little sewing machine engine. It just was a beautiful thing to fly.
Yes, the original heat was a wire brace fuselage. That is, in between the bays, it was diagonal brace with wire, and we came up with a simply better and more practical fuselage. He was one of the first that had a door on the side. He was the first one to use freeze-type ailerons, and he was the first that I know of ever to use brakes. He machined out his own drums and installed the whole doggone works, and they worked right off the bat.
In the latter part of the 30s, the Northwest had a gathering every year of home builders, and one of the big things was altitude. a sealed barograph would be placed aboard, and you would climb until you couldn't climb no more. He won that altitude contest 3 years consecutive.
I got up over 18,000 feet before the first engines. No oxygen. I couldn't spell oxygen up, so I didn't know what oxygen was. I didn't notice I got forgetful. I'm kind of forgetful. Wow. Got to thinking, what the heck am I doing up here? I like to froze to death. That little drop of water froze in the bottom of my nose. Had a red spot there for years after. Oh, it's funny right there. I don't remember how long it took me to get there. I knew it took a long time to get down. It took years. I think it took me 45 minutes to get up there.
You know, I put a lot of responsibility on Walt Gruber. First of all, I knew him for a long while. And he was down there in the shop. And no policy come in or somebody wants to hang in something that nature. I said, no, well, you check him out. You watch him. If he's not capable of getting into the small thing or getting into this place on the screwball, he hadn't got, he did not have a hand. He was with me close to 40 years.
And that was about how long the field lasted. Charlie Bernard developed it in 1928-29 when he bought the property from his uncle, and they closed in late 60s when property taxes increased, and Charlie just couldn't do it anymore. There is a McMenamins there now. It's the Cedar Hills Pub. It's full of photographs from the OAHS archives, so if you have a chance to stop by there, Walker Road in Beaverton is where kind of the end of the field was there. So we worked closely with McMenamins to develop that. They also have the solo board, which I'm pretty jealous of, from Bernard's Field, with all of they have George Yates and Swede Ralston and Myron Buswell and all these names that you can see. They have all their solo cutouts, so it's pretty cool to see. So the last video that we're gonna watch is called Out on the Farm, and it's kind of two separate stories. The first is about Les Long, who is known as kind of the father of home built. He developed the Longsters, which are a lightweight series of aircraft. His goal was to bring aviation to the backyard builder. And then he developed what's known as the Harlequin Longster, and the long Harlequin engine, and it's built from a motorcycle. It's built from a JD Harley Davidson, 2 cylinders, and then it used automobile continental connecting rods and a truck magneto, as you'll hear about. And then there's a set of twins, Don and Dale Holmes, whose family's now in the Bend area, and they built a Northrop glider and conned Les Long into giving them a long Harlequin engine. John Patton in this video will talk about if there was a Hall of Fame for home builds, which is us, this aircraft should be in it. We have located the Holmes glider. It has been rebuilt. It's currently in pieces in Bend, Oregon, with the Holmes family. So we are currently working on that donation and should be picking it up hopefully this summer when Tim Talon wants to cross the pass again. But we have located it and we do have it. What also comes with this glider is you'll see they have an instrument panel that they'll talk about has a speedometer and some magazine cutouts. And so that will also be coming to the museum. It's their original instrument panel from it, along with the license plate and some what we call the Holy Grail of Oregon Aviation, the actual paperwork. Those aircraft registrations will also be with the aircraft. So we're very excited about that. Les Long was also known as the Sage of Cornelius. He didn't really like to leave his house much. He was a bit of an agoraphobic. So he lived on a farm in Cornelius, and the guys would all come to him from Beaverton. If they needed something, he was also a prop carver. You'll hear a story from Swede Ralston. Swede Ralston's the T6 through the Tillamook hangar guy. Swede Ralston and Ed Ball built the Wimpy in the early 1930s. So, without further ado, less long than homes.
Can you tell me about the first airplane that left design and built?
This particular airplane has a welded steel fuselage structure, but being cautious about whether or not it was a flyable machine, he didn't want to put any more time and work into it than he had to before he had some proof that it was a flying machine. He had a test flown without any covering on the fuselage. Just the wings were covered. And we had a fellow who was a commercial pilot who flew some of the airline planes he was pulling, come out and test fly. It was a hot day, and with all this extra drag on the fuselage, prevented it from actually getting off the ground far enough to clear the tank at the end of the field, and it flew it into a telephone pole and wrecked it. Fortunately, he wasn't hurt. So that was the end of that plane. That was a total loss. The next plane that we built was built in a similar way. We made a mistake there of trying to cut corners again, and instead of welding the steel tubing, we brazed the tubing with brazing brass with new gussets. This had a one-piece elevator, and the rudder was above the elevator, so the elevator had complete freedom for up and down motion. And that particular plane really flew quite well. And it turns out that I was the one that test hopped that myself, although we didn't intend that. I got up and taxied it one morning, and it was a little bit gusty. I taxied it back and forth a few times, and finally I found myself in the air, and we flew it around a circle and came back, and that was the test hop for that airplane. I think I'd had all of 10 hours of flying that I experienced by that time.
The lobster will always remain, to me anyway, as a pretty decent sort of design that was fairly stable and it was strong. The lobster was light, terribly light. She weighed under 400 pounds. But her strength lay in the wire bracing, and it would handle a small field. Battle for engines was really exemplified in Long's creative talents. He tackled building an engine. He built quite a credible engine that could turn out around 30 horsepower using the cylinders from a Harley-Davidson. That was the Harlequin. It was a twin.
He got interested in building an airplane propeller for the little 12-horse Piper J2 airplane. We made a few of those things, and they turned out really good, so we started making them out of birch and putting the metal tips on them. And we got the FAA, the CAA approval on that top, and it's still listed in their specifications even today. There was a company by the name of Piper was starting up in the east about that time, and Long was building the propellers for Piper. And they wanted to build under contract all the tops for them, and they said they didn't want to, so some guys didn't even mention it. Because he could just, and I remember that when it all happened. They wanted the lobster top or the good top, and they wanted to build all the tops we could build, and we put the silver Piper. He didn't want to get complicated again. He didn't want a complicated life. In fact, I took my last year of school to build the Ralston lower. He was building a lowering yard there. He didn't want to name it Dr. Long because he thought his reputation was in the Highlands. And Bryce, he was one of the first people to make a lowering airplane, concept of a lowering airplane that would recover from a extreme success rate. Which in the early days, they always thought that a lowering airplane was a very dangerous airplane. It turns out that if you made the tail long enough and got the rudder back far enough behind the wing where it wouldn't be blanked out when you swing, that's why it has such a long fuselage, and it was a very stable, very excellent airplane.
Ralph Long contributed a tremendous amount of knowledge to the airplane industry in his own quiet way.
And that was a real forgiving, safe little airplane. His fuel tank was a 5-gallon can, converted and soldered up for a fuel tank. And it had a 26-horse lump engine in it, 2-cylinder lump engine, flathead engine. And it had, originally it had air wheels on it, but the tires were getting hard to get for the 16 to 7 hour wheels, so I don't know who the dealer put a couple wheel bar wheels on them. They worked out real good. They were a little harder riding, but they worked real good. And it did a lot of flying. A lot of fellas flew that. It was a nice flying airplane.
We're not putting wheelbarrow wheels on it.
The AAA Flying, a magazine published by the Amateur Aircraft Association, took note of the Holmes brothers in the 1944 issue. In part, this is what was written by George Bogart. Some of the most enthusiastic and outstanding home builders of aircraft are boys from the farming district. Perhaps this is because of the inherent ingenuity and common sense with which our farmers are so naturally gifted. Several years ago, we heard of 2 boys and the glider they were building. Their story is one of the true amateur, the builder who relies not on books, theories, and enticing advertisements and magazines, but on their own creative instinct. From somewhere, they had obtained a manual with the drawings and dimensions of a Northrop primary glider. Other than this, they had no help. They had neither ridden in nor seen an airplane so set. They knew nothing of engineering data that could be obtained, nor of supply houses that carried equipment for aircraft. This glider airplane is now a thing of the past, except for an engine, some fabric, and a propeller. It seems to us that if there were ever a Hall of Fame for home-built aircraft, this ship could be among the main exhibits.
How old were you when you started building the glider?
Oh, about 18. And, we had no table saw now. The kids today, they got it made. So it got on armor of some kind and fitted with a wheel. See, put a saw blade on that. And we jack up the old folks' Model T, the hind wheel, and shove that up against the hind wheel of the Model T. That's when we worked till it was success. A lot of the work was done right with a Latin lamp, a kerosene, old lamp, started off pretty good light. And we were dropping the wings in there. And then we went on, we laid it on for a motor. So it's going, started on this one a while. He was kind of didn't know what it was happening, He wanted a written permission from our folks. I don't remember now, Jim Lyons or some kid fixed up something. So then we bought the case and the plant chassis, and we picked up the cylinders. So we got an old truck mag, really big heavy old truck mag stuff on that. But see, a 4-cylinder, very short fuel mount, so just a 2-cylinder. No, we got cranked out there. Yeah. We broke it later. And they got Lincoln's boys at Hillsboro. They bought us a truck of that. And we got a hold of a little lady. And we could run a new one. We bored a hole and had it sawed down, took out the trunk. We started in that way. Then for the engine line, we cut down, cut over. Oh, we had time, what the heck.
Did you have any instruments?
Oh, magazine, paper, pasted on. That was it.
And you had the pictures of instruments?
Yeah.
You didn't have a tachometer?
Yeah, that was a speedometer. We got an old speedometer stuck in there for a while. So we about had a nose turn.
Yeah, so that was the Holmes brothers. So Don Holmes' grandson looks just like white hair, sounds same exact personality. The other thing, I can never imagine any teenager today, so we'll bust a crankshaft, so we got a piece of metal and laid one out, you know, jacking up the Focus Model T. So that was an introduction to kind of the Outlaws. So now we're going to talk about the museum down in Cottage Grove, and this is our new logo. At least one of them. So that's the Rankin Flyer that we'll talk about in just a minute. Excuse me. So our mission at OAHS is to collect, preserve, restore, and display Oregon's unique aviation history for future generations. Like I mentioned, this society was established in 1984 by a group of 10, 12 people who are just aviation minded. There's also, would you call it a flying club, OAAC? The Oregon Antique and Classic Aircraft Club. Is that the rubber? Okay. So that was the original group of vintage aviation enthusiasts who then developed the Aviation Society that now resides in Cottage Grove. We now have several, thanks. Go for it. We are a full nonprofit. We are a 501c3. We're a membership-based organization. We did receive state funds this year, which actually is what brings me here. The state has sponsored all of our travel costs to spread the word about Oregon's aviation history. As far as that goes, we do not receive any other federal or state funding. We are a membership-based organization and private volunteers and docents. I am the only employee at OAHS, part-time, and oversee daily operations. The actual museum hangar, we are up to, I believe, 9 aircraft at the moment. So this yellow in the corner, there is the Monster, the license plates. We also have the Oregon Aviation Hall of Fame, which currently consists of 20 Oregonians and non-Oregonians who had a great impact in aviation, including Rex Barber, Tex Rankin, Marion Carl, Kenneth Jernstedt, many across the board. One of my favorite little new aircraft is this guy right here. Does anybody know what that is? So it is known as the Moore SS3. It was built in Sweet Home, Oregon by a guy named Arlen Moore. He originally built gliders in the early 1960s, and his original home-built glider is in the Glider Museum in Moriarty, New Mexico. He built that in 1980. It's got a Continental 65 with a custom scimitar prop, so it's got the curved prop on it, and it cruises at about 120, so they say. It has super forward swept wings. The aircraft he built before it was a Casset, which is why it has the Casset fuselage look to it. But it hung out in Sweet Home and Sisters. He didn't take it to fly-ins. He didn't like to show it off. And for our home-built fly-in, it appeared at the museum. We also have Lane County's very first experimental aircraft, which is the Baby Fleet, right here. And then, of course, the RV3, which was done by our local EAA Chapter 31. Van Brunsman attended our home-built fly-in last year to dedicate that to the museum. We also have a restoration hangar on the field. It's overseen by Tim Talon, but we have about 4 different projects going on in different spots. So this is the actual hangar that's on the field, just down from the museum. The Rankin Great Lakes. So this was an aircraft that was given to Dorothy Hester, another Oregon aviatrix, which they're kind of the type certified Oregon history, as we call it, at Swan Island. But the Great Lakes was gifted to Dorothy in the early 1930s for her to take to the Cleveland Air Races, that she was the first woman ever invited. Rankin had some modifications made to it. He flew it throughout the 1940s before his death. It was located in Pennsylvania in a scrapyard. And based on the changes that Rankin had made when it was built, we have positively identified it as Dorothy Hester and Tex Rankin's aircraft. It's currently under restoration in our main hangar, so it's on display at the moment. We're hoping to have it up by 2020, but we'll see how it goes. A few of the other projects. So the Rupert Special over here, which is the aircraft that Walt Rupert built based on the Heath design. However, Tim Talon spoke with Walt, and it's not really a Heath design. Looks just like one though. That one's in line. The Whipple Hen, which was designed by Lee Irely in Salem. And then the Wimpy is currently in our restoration shop. They're getting ready to extend the fuselage. Later in life, it was cut down to be kind of a racer aircraft. So they're working on extending both the wings and the fuselage back to the original WAAAM design. And the Story 1 and Story 2. So these are two of my favorite aircraft that we have at the museum. Story number 2, is anybody familiar with the Flybaby? Okay. So Pete Bowers designed the Flybaby in 1963, and it was based on Story Special number 2, which was owned by the Story Flying Club. It's kind of a beefed up Flybaby. You can fit a big guy in it, girl, whatever. And this one needs about a conditional inspection, and it'll be ready to fly, hopefully for our home built fly-in in Labor Day weekend. Story Special number 1, which is this fuselage right here. We have a group who's taken it away, and it's almost ready for fabric. So we're hoping to have it up and flying by the end of this year. These two aircraft were also on the very first color edition of EAA's Sport Aviation. So our goal is to kind of recreate that photo as well. Our 3 major events, we do have pancake breakfast through the summer, every first Saturday. The Wings and Wheels is a big vintage show that we have every year. The Steerman fly-in, so we kind of have the West Coast Steerman fly-in every year, and we also honor Jim Wright. Anybody familiar with the H-1, the Racer Hughes aircraft? That was rebuilt in Cottage Grove. Jim Wright was on our field. Tragically, he was lost on his way home from Oshkosh, so we honor his memory. We do have the last remaining piece of that aircraft, the propeller that he broke the speed record with. And Steermen come every year to help us celebrate. We have also instituted the Great Oregon Home-Built Fly-In. So when Walt talked about breaking that altitude record, that's the fly-in that was held in Eugene every year throughout the 1930s. So we have reinstituted that. Last year we had about 65 aircraft on field, including tons of RVs because bands showed up. So that was a fun one. But we had a bunch of EAA biplanes and Baby Aces came down, so it was a lot of fun. And the archives. So as far as we know, we're the only air museum in the state that has climate-controlled archives. We have thousands of photographs, memorabilia. We are currently redoing all of our walls, so a lot of these photographs have been made into enlargements to tell the stories throughout the museum. So you're welcome to come visit, you're welcome to come look through the archives. You can always shoot us an email if there's something in particular that you're looking for. And then we have interviews and the DVDs also available. That's it. All right. And how you can help. We're always looking for new members, new docents. If you'd ever like to sponsor an aircraft, we're always looking for that too. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed and enjoy your day away.